What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Submission Fishing Podcast. Glad you could join us. My name is Muto. I'm the owner of Submission Fishing Company. We're back with episode 4. Good to see you guys again. And we got a good show. We got Kevin Nakata returning back today, and we're going to talk a little bit about a really important topic about where you can fish, where you can't fish. I know it's kind of a confusing thing. It's a really kind of a divisive topic, with landowners and fishermen and where you can and can't fish. It's especially fishing in new areas where I am. It's always important to, dig into the laws and more importantly, know your rights. And that's really something we're going to touch on today. And we got none other than the great Kevin Nakata joining us again. So we'll bring him on. Kevin,
Wow,
how you doing, man?
the great, oh
The
boy,
great Kevin Nakata.
oh boy.
If you guys haven't heard Kevin, he joins me quite a bit. He's a fishing rep. He reps my product along with bunch of other ones, and right, was a Hobie, worked at Hobie, was a guide. Now you're running the fishing thing, commercial fisherman, but
Commercial.
also
Yeah.
you still working with the CCA?
Yeah, they had a state board meeting today, and I wasn't there. Unfortunately, I've been pretty busy. Have a few meetings that I needed to get done, but I still support CCA. I'm a lifetime member. I've been a lifetime member since 2015 when when CCA was first brought into California, and they just had a huge meeting up in, I believe it was Santa Barbara. Huge amount of people showed up, and it was basically to make sure everyone was kind of clear where the direction is going and hear input from the community. And yeah, they had massive amount of people show up, and I was pretty pleased. So um, you can look up what it was actually that they were there for. But yeah, I've been, I definitely have in the past been a bit more, you know, uh, associated with CCA, and I've done a lot more in the past than I have now, but I've definitely needed to step back so I can help run the business that I, own, fishing reps, and make sure it goes the right way. So but it's been going very well. So I'm sure I'll
Yeah,
be back in Cali and supporting them whenever I can. But California or Florida is also has a CCA chapter, and it's huge in Florida. So learning
yeah,
some
Texas.
things over
It's
there.
a nationwide thing, right? But each state kind of has its own.
I think there's 13 states that participate in the CCA, and they're all coastal. So
Most of
because
coastal,
Coastal
yeah,
Conservation Association, Texas is where it really started, and then Louisiana is like right next door to Texas, obviously. So they were able to get on board with the program, and then Florida came on, and so on and so forth. Charleston or South Carolina has a chapter, and California. I believe there's 13 states that are involved. So
awesome.
um, yeah, very important.
Yeah, yeah. I just want to bring that up so people know, you're even familiar with that side. You're the man of many hats when it comes to fishing. So you definitely,
Yep.
we appreciate your expertise. Yeah, one thing I really wanted to talk about on this show was um, basically where you can and can't fish. This seems to be divisive issue with landowners and fishermen, and it's kind of nerve wracking. If you don't know what's going on and where you're going, and people threaten to get authorities involved. So I'd really just like to clear that up a little bit. Especially here
Yeah.
in, I'm fishing in Florida, and it's it's a whole new thing, right? Like you're fishing all these docks, and where can you go and where can you can't go, and it's just a lot different than California when it comes to docks. But really, a lot of the laws are pretty similar, all throughout the area. And I think we'll really get into that. One of the biggest takeaways I want people to understand is, and especially for like the younger audience, I know we got like some young listeners in. What I want them to really understand is the difference between public land and private land, and that's really the crux of, I think, pretty much everything, and I think that gets kind of confusing for the younger generation. If you don't own land yet, you're not a homeowner, you're not into politics, you're not following these things, you're just a grom out there, you're still in school, and you want to be in the right place in the right time.
Yeah. Definitely the next generation is probably the least prepared as far as knowing their rights and defending themselves when they are ready to actually, when the time comes to actually step up to the plate and say I can do this. this is what I'm legally allowed to do. But it's also because, you know, the culture out there right now is so um, bent to authority that it is something that people are trained essentially to just cave to when someone tells them
Yeah.
not to do something. And
Yeah.
so it gets to the point where if you just keep letting people tell you what to do, how are you supposed to actually like fish? Like
Yeah.
at this point, you can't even access some of this stuff because people are afraid of private owners basically telling them they can't do something.
Yeah.
So
And I know one of my most popular YouTube videos was one where the
yeah,
that Karen was trying to kick me out, threatening to call the police, and I didn't move.
yeah, yeah.
But the most important thing is just that for the younger guys out there to just kind of delineate what we're talking about. Basically, public property is when we refer to that is basically it's owned by nobody. It's the people's property. It's taxpayers. It's common ground. It's meaning it's not really owned. You can be on it. I can be on it. Um,
It's the state,
it's
it's federal.
yeah,
It is public land. It is
yeah.
anyone
It belongs to all of us. It belongs to
can.
the taxpayers. If you pay taxes, and even if you don't have a job, if you're buying a candy bar, you pay taxes on that. You're buying gas, you pay taxes on that. Even if you're not buying land and paying taxes in a job, I guarantee you're paying taxes in some way, whether you know it or not. And those are the things that really support um, the government and the land that we have. Private property, when we refer to that, is basically somebody owns that, either a person or an entity, but it does not belong to the public or the taxpayers. It's owned land, and you don't have access to that. It's
It's like
Kevin owns land, I own land.
it's like a house. A
Yeah,
house, you
it's
just can't go into someone's house without permission or walk on their land without them, saying something, like get off my property if they want you to. It's different,
right, right, and that's where we get into a lot of the confusion. Especially, we do a lot of primarily saltwater fishing, and I think this is one of the most contentious things that we run into with fishing docks. Um, where a lot of people, and I think anybody that's fished docks long enough has had somebody come out and harass them and
Oh
tell
yeah.
them that they couldn't fish there. Have you run into that?
Oh man, yeah, it's normal. That's just a normal thing. And maybe they won't yell at you, but they'll just be like the other day I was out with Corey King where we're just walking in a public dock and it was normal. Like it was just normal to go fish there. And someone goes, "Hey, I really, don't like you to be near my boat because my dog doesn't like it. They bark." And I was like, okay, like, we're not really doing anything to bother you. We're just here to fish and like we'll move away to just give us a couple casts and very cordial and back and forth for about two conversations and I walked the other way and no, she just let us continue being our person. So no confrontation was started so that I didn't have to deal with it, but I was prepared to pull my rights out and be ready to do this. So
Yeah.
um, and that's good. It feels good. Like if anyone watches like these guys that are getting pulled over and it's like a big thing now on YouTube where people are filming,
Oh,
when
the
victims,
auditors, First
yeah,
Amendment auditors and stuff.
yeah, so they
Yeah.
basically are in the car and the guy gets pulled over and he's like, "Why'd you pull me over?" And the cops got to give him a good reason or else, there's no probable cause. That's your first step is what's the reason for you to get pulled over? And then if they want to search your car, well, you can't just they just can't go and search your car without a warrant. So, there's a lot of things that people just don't know about, but if you say you just cave in and let the authority, the cop have that's their way with you, yeah, of course they're going to do whatever you want because you just gave them the ability to do that by saying yes, by
Yeah.
diving
No,
in. So if you're
absolutely.
armed with knowledge and rights, you know that you can do things to a certain extent.
Yeah. It was funny because when I was researching this, it was somebody in like, I think 2019 or something. I'll link the article in the thing, but he was fishing in a boat and some homeowner told him to get out of here, and he refused and he didn't leave. And then the cops showed up and the cops told him to leave. And, oh no, the cops told him to leave and he wouldn't leave. So they tried to hail him to come to shore and he didn't come to shore. He just drove away. So
Yeah.
then they got police boats out, and they ended up ticketing this guy, nothing for trespassing. And long story short, he ended up winning.
Oh,
It
sure.
went to court. The city found that, surprise, they had no reason to even confront this guy, um, to talk to him or even bring him over because he wasn't doing anything wrong. And even though he left, and they cited him tickets that had nothing to do with trespassing, probably because when he was leaving, but he actually won the case, won a civil suit, against the cities and stuff like that. But that brings us to the question, like, so can we fish in the ocean? Can we fish under docks? What's your understanding on that?
Well, I've done a huge amount of research because I wanted to make sure that the next generation was armed, and anyone out there, really, I don't care if it's someone who's 70 that wants to go fish a dock and wants to enjoy the waterways. I was going to do something to make sure that people at least knew their rights well enough to know that they had some kind of um, support from the government side, the people who are actually going to be going against you anyways, to show and flex basically your knowledge against these people and to have your defense. So I've written an article. I'm going to show it. I think I can do that on my thing.
And I think you wrote this after I had my confrontation, right? I
I
think it was,
wrote
yeah,
this. Yeah, I
after my
wrote this
YouTube. And you guys
after.
can see I have a YouTube video where this whole kind of thing went down.
Just give me 1 second. Can you see that? What do
Yeah.
you see?
You want me to bring it up or no?
What do you see right now?
Fishing your page.
Okay. So, oops. The the articles are right here.
Do you want me to pull it up?
No, I got it.
Okay.
On fishingreps.com, it's on under articles, and you can see essentially I wrote this piece to make people aware of what the situation would be. I started off by explaining basically you're fishing on a dock and you hear this Karen come out and they say, "Get the F off my dock," right? Out of my marina, out of this marina. And so
And we're
uh,
talking fishing from the water,
yes.
like in a
So
boat, kayak.
if you're in a kayak or you're in a boat or a float tube and you're going
Mhm.
up to a dock and you're fishing next to the pylons or near boats, and someone comes and yells at you to get out of the marina, what are you going to do? What is your next step? And so in this article, there's three different state constitutional laws, and then there's one fish and game code law that I put together that basically supports someone's ability to continue fishing and accessing a public waterway. So the combined three are really the full case and defense for someone who is accessing the private waters and then fishing from them. And then also, the defense for someone who's being told to get the F out of the marina. It explains what those people can't do to you. So, um, anyways, people can look this up on fishingreps.com. That's the website. That you can basically see all of the information that you see on the screen right now. But the first one that people need to know is State Constitution Article 1, this Section 25, and that is, in my opinion, one of the most firmest arguments from the state level, which it supersedes pretty much most laws. It depends on the case, but and who's basically defending or coming to court with each of the sides of the case. But the strongest one that you can probably get is a state constitutional law, right? It's pretty hard to amend a constitutional law or
Right.
remove it from the Constitution. So and each state has its own constitution. So this is California's. So it reads, "The people shall have the right to fish upon and from the public lands of the state and in the waters thereof, excepting upon lands set aside for fish hatcheries, and no land owned by the state shall ever be sold or transferred without reserving in the people the absolute right to fish thereupon. And no law shall ever be passed making it a crime for the people to enter upon public lands within this state for the purpose of fishing in any water containing fish that have been planted therein by the state, provided that the legislature may, by statute, provide for the season when and the conditions under which the different species of fish may be taken. And that's why you have all these, seasons for fish and
Correct.
where you can fish.
Regulations. Yeah.
Yeah, those are part of the that is laws that and rules that have been put into place by the Department of Fish and Game. But within all that, this constitutional article right here, Section 25, is very much the biggest part of how fishermen are interacting with land. So if you read all that and you understand it, what it says in a nutshell is that people have the right to fish in public lands in the state of California. There are certain lands that are set up for fish hatcheries and other things that people may not have access to because they don't, people in that situation, it's they're already creating that land to basically grow the fish that are part of the initiative to actually go and catch the fish within the state. So that's part of like a really big part of the misconception of that article. But I'll go down a little bit of a segue. Part of
And
that,
these are California laws too, and Florida's are actually very similar. Almost every state is extremely similar, and even if you got these kind of laws in California, you can guarantee they're pretty much going to be in a lot of the other.
yeah.
I just read Cal or Florida's, and it was extremely similar. But yeah, go on.
So one really interesting thing is that there's a part of this that says, I'll read it to you. And no law shall ever be passed making it a crime for the people to enter upon the public lands within the state for the purpose of fishing in any water containing fish that have been planted therein by the state. Now, it gets really tricky on that part
Mm-hmm.
because if you do your research, way back when, I can even pull up I have the article somewhere. Um, Let me look it up and see if I can find it. Sometime like in 1910 or something like that, or it's somewhere around there. Um, there was a time period where I actually have the articles. Just give me 1 second. I'm going to pull this up.
Yeah, I mean it does definitely get tricky what you're
Oh
talking
no,
about.
no,
So
just you haven't heard this story yet. So just I'm gonna interrupt you and just I'm gonna explain something to you. Really, you haven't heard this before,
blow my
so
mind.
I'm gonna blow your mind a little
How do you
bit.
know I haven't heard it before?
I know you haven't. It's really I've been waiting on this for just a little while. Um,
See, you didn't even know what topic we were doing either, and
no,
I
I've
gifted
held
you
on.
this opportunity.
This file is on my this file is on my computer actually, and I've hidden it because I don't know if someone's ever going to remove this. So I downloaded this because this is almost the most damning evidence. This is a study talking about striped bass being planted by the state in San Francisco Bay, and they also did it in Mission Bay at one time. So, what is the body of water that San Francisco Bay attaches to?
The Pacific,
Exactly. So if
of
the
course.
state is planting fish into the water, right, the ocean,
Right. So the whole Pacific then would be
how can you even claim that any part of the ocean in the Pacific in California has not been planted with a fish that was literally planted by the state, right?
right. Yeah.
So that article right there, Article 1, Section 25, combined with the damning evidence that shows that and I'll show you exactly where this talks about it. The history of California planting these fish is just literally it is the best case that shows that you can pretty much fish any body of water in California because the state purposely planted fish into the ocean, in
Interesting.
my opinion.
Yeah.
Now, I think a lawyer would have to get involved. I'm not a lawyer. I'm just telling you the history, right?
Right. Right.
Um, but I'm going to show you specific, and it's going to explain some of the history here. I got to get to that point where they talk about where they planted the fish and when they did. But there is specific.
For those
history.
of you that are listening on the podcast version on like Spotify, what we're looking at is an actual PDF. Was this printed in 1940s?
This
That
is a
this is
it's
like a book or a document that was scanned, right?
1950. Yeah, I'll
Yeah,
give you the article or the
yeah.
author here in
We'll
a
put
little
the
bit.
link in there too. It's an actual report.
Yeah, it's I think you can hardly find it on this on the web now, which is why I downloaded this. It's very important. Okay, here we go. It's at the very beginning. An introduction. I'm stupid. Okay, introduction. If you can't read this, let me zoom in a little bit. Um, Give me 1 second. How do I zoom in this? Here we go. I've been saving this one, Muto. This has been some. I've been doing some burying on this, man. So the striped bass was introduced to the Pacific coast in 1879, when 132 small fish, which had been shipped from New Jersey, were planted in San Francisco Bay. In 1882, an additional plant of 300 small bass was made in the same waters. In 1889, 10 years following the original planting, the United States Bureau of Fisheries reported a commercial catch in California of 16,296 pounds. 3 years later, the catch had increased to 56,209 pounds. From the small plantings in San Francisco Bay, the striped bass has spread along the coast until at present its range extends from San Diego, California to the Columbia River, which is in Oregon.
Wow. Yeah.
In Oregon, the bass are abundant in Coos Bay, with small runs occurring in Coquille and Umpqua rivers. Occasionally, bass are taken in some other rivers, including the Columbia. It has been reported that the first striped bass caught in Coos Bay was taken in by a gill netter in 1914. At present, the bass is commercials has is at the present time the bass is important as both a commercial and sport fish in Coos Bay. Not really any longer. So, um, it goes down a little bit more to explain the Fish and Game Commission how in their involvement was with this. And so they were basically at one point, just to give you kind of a short story, the Fish and Game Commission came in and supported the striped bass commercial fishery along the Pacific coast because it had such an impact and people were really, it was a lot of money at some point. Like there was a
Right.
lot of people making money off of this. Kind of a forgotten story, but like this fish was brought from New Jersey, planted by the state in San Francisco Bay, and then they also did it in San Diego
San
and Mission
Diego.
Bay at one point. So where do you draw the line on the body of water when the fish they just said was from San Diego all the way up to Columbia, up to Oregon? Which part of the coast is now off limits from the planted fish that they put in the water? Tell me.
Right. Right.
I have no idea how they're gonna argue that.
Yeah. I
So
mean, the way that they've worded it for sure. Because it's interesting. They obviously probably wrote that law like way after when pretty much
no,
all they stock now is like lakes and
no. This was 1910 that the article was put in for the Constitution. That state
oh,
constitutional
stocking. Oh,
article was
interesting.
1910. It was
Oh,
after
wow.
and then they did the plan still afterwards.
Oh,
So
interesting. I wasn't aware of
yeah,
that. Yeah, that's mind blowing. Yeah,
oh yeah, no, this has existed for a long time. So
yeah,
how can someone contradict that with municipal law? That's where this all gets weird, right? Because now you have guys in LA who are not able to fish certain harbors and certain marinas because they're being told that the marina has just the jurisdiction, and the city of Los Angeles has jurisdiction over the marinas and how to implement laws within the marinas and the rights of the owners, right? And so it gets kind of weird because the city's saying you can't do it, but the state clearly says you can do it. So
right.
who's in the wrong here? Who's in the right, right? And so if there's
Well,
any lawyer,
typically it's city, state, federal. I'm pretty sure the state laws supersede the city laws in
well,
most cases.
but that they did it in most cases. So this is where it gets weird, right? Because it depends on the lawyer, it depends on who's in court, who judges.
Right.
But there's certain cases. There's actually a case going on right now, which I also brought up, that there's specific land that someone you're always needing to give access to public land, even if you're a private landowner. If there's a public piece of land and it's near your place and there's no other way to get to it, you have to give the public access to it, right? And
Yeah, it's
so
easements and stuff like that.
Correct. There's ways you have to make people allow them to get to places, right? You just have to. It's part of accessing that public land. So now there's a fight happening, and actually our friend Corey King brought this up to me when I was discussing this exact same thing. This was about a week or 2 weeks ago. Um, and essentially it's in court right now, and they haven't settled on the decision yet. But essentially a landowner has a piece of property. There was a trail that they need, that people were accessing. They wanted to cross over and get to there, and the guy's like, no, I can't, you can't do that. And so he blocked the way, and the guy's getting sued. So and they don't know how to deal with it, right?
Right.
So it's going through court. It's been like 3 years going through the process, trying to find a decision, judge, jury, well, not jury, but a judge and, two lawyers and the two different parties that are defending each other. But in essence, what I'm kind of understanding, right, is that, like you said, there's certain laws that just overwhelm whatever you're battling. I
Yeah.
think, I think that if someone was to go to court with the three laws that I have that I've brought up, which I haven't brought up the other two, but Article 1, Section 25 of the Constitution, state constitution, holds a lot of water. Like that you have to change that constitutional law in order to avoid, like, someone literally accessing public water. Like, how are you going to fight that? So
Yeah.
um
And that just goes back to what we're saying is that, so the answer is, if you can fish public waters regardless of docks or boats or anything on it. I think what people have to understand is that docks themselves are private property, but they're private property on public land. As somebody that just bought a house that's like on a riverfront, we run into things which are called the riparian laws, and that's where they deal with basically private property meets public property within the waterways and who has rights to it. So when you own private property up to a waterway, you have right to build a dock, to not have your view covered, and you have right to access the water. But then you don't own, they basically, you're giving you the right to build a private dock on public land. Everything under the land is public. Everything, I mean, the dock, everything under the dock, everything around the dock is all public water and is completely fishable. The dock
yeah,
itself is a different story. You can't tie up on the dock, you can't go on the dock, and you can't obviously damage the dock. You don't want to be casting into it and stuff like that. But anything under and around the docks are not owned by private property. They're
well,
they're in public waterways,
but so
in
that
salt water.
everything you said is right, and even further, it's access to that waterway,
Yes.
right? Because there's rocks to access the water, or just land in general to access the water. There's the water itself that you can't block access to in order to get to that water, right? So you
Right.
can't just make a marina, put a wall around the water, on the water, and say you can't come in.
Right.
That's illegal. You can't do
Yes.
that in California. You're just not allowed to do that. Unless you have some, like, I'm sure there's certain circumstances where that might be legal, but I'd be all ears to see how they got that done. I don't think you can do that. That's why when you
No.
see a dock, the dock doesn't have a wall around the boats. It is right there. You can go and
Yes.
touch
It's
the boat if
accessible
you want.
waterway. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's where the line is drawn. You can't touch the boat. You can't touch the dock
Correct.
because that's
Correct.
not something you can touch. You can't even put
Correct.
a line on the dock. You can't do
Correct.
anything like that. You have to stay completely away from touching that dock.
Yes.
So
And that's what
that's
people need to understand is that you can fish there, and don't be bullied when somebody tells you can't, comes out here and tells you can't, because you can fish there. And we're
mhm,
talking mostly the saltwater on the coast. This is Florida and California, but you cannot touch the dock or the property. But you
that's
can be
right.
in front of it, you can be near it, you can cast under it. I mean, that's all fair game. So don't
If
be
you
don't I
if
just
you
want people to understand, don't be intimidated by people coming out and telling you that you need to get out of there. I think one of the problems is so many people leave because they don't want confrontation. When a homeowner, or in my case, it was a with the marina manager or somebody
mind,
came out cussing at me, yelling at me, telling me he was going to call the police, and I don't care. Honestly, I just fished there. I was going to move through, but I purposefully just stayed there and fished longer, just to
yeah,
just to prove a point. And Nobody
So
showed up.
in my experience, the same marina that you were fishing, a week later, I was fishing there with Lane. We
And he
were
did call the police, right?
He did. Oh, he
Yeah.
called the police. And we were moving on, we weren't there trying to start anything. We kind of fished it. We ignored him a little bit and then we walked away, and about 15 minutes later, the harbor police comes up. And we were way down the way already. We were fishing other docks. So it was like we weren't making it, we weren't scared. We were doing what we
Right.
wanted to do. And I basically came out and met them because I wanted to show that I was mobile and able to move around and not, basically, I wasn't endangering anyone, right? I wasn't inhibiting someone's movement in and out of a dock because they can also get you for that.
Sure. But if
Um,
somebody needs to move, it's let them go through. Like it's
but they need to know that. So if you're
yeah.
not moving and you're preventing someone from getting out of their slip, that's illegal. So
Sure.
you want to show that you're not there to start trouble, right?
Sure.
Or
But
create
I
a
mean,
problem.
we could also get into the whole fact that man powered vessels have the right of way anyways.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I mean that's a whole
unmanned has
unpowered
under no
man
power,
powered vessels like
manpower.
paddles, yeah.
Yeah,
Anything
unpowered.
without a motor. So
Yep.
canoes, kayaks actually
Float
have the
tubes.
right of way over powered vessels. So
Correct.
well, that's a whole nother story, but yeah.
Well, that's part of this whole thing
Yes.
still, right? So, anyways, the harbor patrol, basically pulls up on their big boat. They got called. So, and we basically, I explained to them, I was like, I do know my rights, and I know that we were able to access this water, and I was able to fish in the marina and next to these boats, and I didn't touch the boat. I never went out on the dock. I never touched the line on their boats. I never did any of that. And they said, okay, yeah, we know, man. Like we understand. Just don't start any trouble. We didn't really need to, come out here, but we did it because the guy called us and we wanted to come out. We needed to come out and see what was going on. I said, I respect that, and I do know my rights. I know I'm able to fish this water. And then they're like, okay, great. We know that you can fish it too. So have a good day and we'll see you later. They did say afterwards that I was to get called again, or if someone was calling me and saying I couldn't fish there, to call them. They
Correct.
actually made that offer
Yeah.
back. So
Yeah.
the harbor
Because that
did that.
yeah, that's another wrinkle to the story too, is that not only are you allowed to fish there, but fishermen and hunters actually have rights against being harassed and told not
Yes,
to fish.
that's
Here
in the article I
in
wrote.
Florida and in California, it is illegal to prevent people from fishing and hunting and harassing them um, while they're doing lawful activities like fishing. So if you're fishing your dock, now if somebody just comes up and spooks a fish on accident, that's not what we're talking about. But if they're throwing bricks in the water, spraying you with a hose, and preventing you from fishing, that is actually illegal. And that's what I don't understand, because I know that guy's called the harbor police many times. I don't know why that guy's not citationed for making false call, right? Like that's he knows that guy had to have been talked to. He has to know that people can legally fish there. And the fact that
Well,
he keeps calling the police, like I don't know why that's the kind of guy that should be
he has his client's
they're
best
false police
interest.
reports though,
He has his
is my
client.
point.
He has his client's best interest. If his job is to prevent people from going near a $1 billion yacht, I would hope that he'd probably do his job and try to get people scared enough to go away.
Yeah,
But
those ones aren't even the expensive ones.
yeah, well,
Kellogg, the Kellogg ones are that
there's some pretty
marina.
expensive
They're
yachts
pretty
in that.
nice. Yeah, there's some nice ones, but
Yeah, I'm saying, multi-million-dollar yacht. The guy has his vested interest with his clients, right? And
right.
that's fine. You as long as you don't now if someone hits a boat, you're toast, man. Like
Yeah,
you
yeah.
you
I
might
mean
be
that's
in some
property
trouble.
damage. Yeah,
Yeah, so you might
100%.
be in some trouble. But if you're doing exactly what we're talking about here, which is abiding by constitutional laws, fish code that's I specifically laid out in an article on fishingreps.com. You can go look it up. It literally lays out the groundwork for your entire argument in California. Now in Florida, having fished it now, I've been around the community, and before I actually was over there at your place, long before I got there, I'll tell you that one thing that is totally different is the culture. You won't even have this conversation. They don't do that. In
Yeah,
fact, a lot of people want you to come and fish on their dock if it's a public dock, of course. Some people even do it as private owners. Like they don't do this, by the way, unless you get access and you get approval by the owner. But some people are nice enough to be like, sure, go and fish my dock. Like, it's fun. There's fish right here. Like, I never
Yeah.
see anyone try.
And the
So,
one thing the one thing that's different, like what's weird is in Florida is as opposed to California. So like I'm on the St. Johns River, and the two geographical differences are everything here, every dock here is like private.
yeah,
Not private in the sense they are private property, but they're still on the public waterways. But they're behind houses and backyards. Like
sure.
there's windows. Like I literally watch people fish. I look out my back window and I see people fishing the dock
Well, yeah,
right there. I see them fishing my seawall, and it's a lot more personal. And so for me, for somebody that fishes, I'm out there in a kayak. It's kind of like it's weird because you're literally fishing in somebody's backyard. You
oh
know they
yeah,
can see you. You know they're watching you.
mm-hmm.
Where in California, it's you don't have that. Like there don't
It's rare.
there's not
Newport,
houses there's not
Newport,
houses with docks. Yeah, some parts in Newport, but
yeah,
generally it's a marina
LA, some
with
parts,
100 or 1,000 boats in it. It's a little
yeah,
more. It's a lot less personal. Where Florida, it's like it hits a little differently. Like you're like this is somebody's
they're
backyard. I'm in somebody's yard right now. Is what it feels like, and that's where it
yeah.
was. That's what prompted me to look at bring this whole topic up because I had to read laws and I had to familiar. And though I'm pretty sure I'm like, look, this is the salt waters, the St. Johns River. I'm positive it's public land, but I still, did my due diligence before I went out there and fished and stuff
The
like that.
only time I can think of it really being illegal to fish a dock is if the entire body of water is on a piece of land, right? A private land, the ranch, whatever,
Yeah.
If
Well,
you have, if
yes,
that
yes, yes.
person owns the entire piece of property, including that pond, because the land surrounds the pond, that's
Correct.
you can't access it.
Yes.
But if,
That's one of those gray areas because I read into that. There's canals here. So people bought a
yep,
land on the river, but then they purposefully channeled canals into the private property.
yep,
And now the canal, even though it's the St. Johns River water, you could get a kayak in there, but it's actually part of a homeowner made it a canal into their property to like add.
yeah.
So there are interest. That's where you get into gray areas where it's like it's really at that point who owns it, right? Did they lose their rights or now are you on private property? It's becomes interesting.
Yeah, and I think like honestly, there's so much water in Florida that you really need to get back in there, maybe. But like,
No, probably
I
not.
mean, you even have an area when you go up to the left side from your house. There's a whole bunch of arms up there that you would see that you would interact with exactly what you're saying
Yeah.
way up in there. It does that. So
Yeah.
I'm
And
not
I
sure.
went back there and I didn't even like you said, I didn't go that deep. I'm like, I didn't I don't need to go back in there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There's not. It might not even be really fishy. There's some places that will look really good. I've watched several YouTube videos in that same arm where I'm like, wow, that looks. I mean, there's snook back there in the winter where you're just like, that does not happen normally. It's a special spot. So,
Yeah.
but I think in general, my point I was trying to make was that culturally, people are more open to fishing. They're not trying to
Sure.
prevent people from fishing in Florida. Everyone fishes. If you had to put a ratio, I'd say 50% of the people in Florida fish. Like literally, that's how many people fish, maybe more,
Yeah.
or at least are
I mean,
familiar with
you
it.
just look at like the fishing license sales. It's like
It's
it's
18
off,
million.
it's off the charts. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
considering how
18
many more
million.
people live in California, but
It's 2 million in Cali. It's not
yeah,
even that. So
that's crazy.
yeah, there's more people that live in California.
Yeah,
So
what 30, 36 million people or something like that.
something
I
like
don't
that.
know. I don't know how many live in Florida, but it's not as much as California.
No,
I know
California
that.
has the most U.S. citizens.
Yeah.
So I think Texas is next, and then I think Florida. So, but it's crazy. Like people in California have this anti-fishing bias built over
Yes. 100%.
time, and in Florida they don't do that. It's the complete opposite. Like, and it's not necessarily all about politics. It's about what people see and hear and the NGOs involved, the non-government organizations that are out there spitting and telling people you shouldn't like fishing. Like fishing's bad, it's killing the world, blah blah blah. Um, which doesn't really matter what your point is. The bottom line is that recreational fishermen are not the problem.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's who we are addressing right now. Even though I commercial fish and I have it's rod and reel, hook and line, but you know, recreational fishing is just so infinitesimally smaller than in an impact compared to anything else in the fishing industry, they honestly shouldn't even be part of the conversation as far as a detrimental side to
Right.
any fishery. They're
Especially
so
when you
small.
consider how many people just catch and release too. Like
Yeah,
when you take that percentage too, like even if they all were catching and keeping fish, it wouldn't be a problem. But then you half probably are all catch and release fishermen, so it's like
yeah.
yeah, it's crazy.
Maybe, and it depends on the fish, but yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, there's other like, rockfish, groundfish are probably one of the most
they get
uh
harvested. Yeah,
big. Yeah, they definitely need a little help. There's definitely a time where something needs to be stepped in because they do need help on occasion. So,
yeah,
um, but yeah, so anyways, the doc thing that we were talking about, I would love one opportunity to really see a case where someone has to go to court because they were fishing near a dock, but they never touched the dock, and municipal law told them and prevented them that they couldn't do that. I would like to see that, because if someone brings up the constitutional laws and the fishing game code that allows them to access that public water, if they lose, that's just a terrible thing. Like, it just unwinds everything that someone can do as a public citizen in a public piece of
yeah.
land or waterway. I
And I think
I don't think it could work.
most law enforcement know. I think the biggest BS about it though is how they usually tell the fishermen to leave just to like not create a scene and be
Right.
cool about it, and they
Yeah.
should be telling the other person to kiss their ass and let them know they can fish there. And they usually tell them that, oh, he has a right to be here, but hey, buddy, can you leave anyways to keep the peace? Like, hell no.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's not the right answer. Is leaving is not the right answer, in my opinion. But
Yeah, because it'll just keep doing
yeah,
the person that is saying you can't fish here will use all the history built up when they got success moving someone
yes,
out. They'll continue doing that
yeah,
until they're told you can't do that.
yeah,
And if they keep getting told you can't do that, then they'll probably do it a lot less, and they'll just be grumpy. But if
yeah,
they start blocking your access and do weird stuff, now you've got them.
yeah.
Now they're
And I
doing
think
activities.
a lot of problem too is like as anglers, we need to stand together and you need to not leave. Because I think a lot of people are scared of the confrontation and they just go because it's easier.
Or they're not
They
prepared.
they don't want to get into it, but no, if you can legally fish somewhere, you need to exercise your rights. The more the anglers stay and don't leave, that's the only way you're gonna get these Karens to get the message, because I think a lot of them know that we can legally fish there, but I think they also know 80% of the time the person's gonna leave when they tell them to leave, so they just keep doing it. If nobody was leaving, that's how you win the war. you know,
It isn't necessarily a war as much as it is like
it's a war on Karens.
yeah, I mean it's a culture change. Something needs to change, like you can't let this keep going, because at some point you're just going to lose all your rights,
It's a
which is
cold war.
yeah, Cold War.
It
Yeah.
is. It really is. Yeah.
At some point, if you don't do something and you don't make your stand, you're just going to lose more than what you would ever think you'd lose. And that could be a problem, because then once
Yeah.
you lose it, to get it back, not likely. So,
Yeah. And that's one of the other problems with. So we talk about the public laws and public fishing, but then you have this whole other corrupt, absolute government land grab with 30 by 30 and MPAs, where in California, they've already shut down 16% of the fishable waters on the coast that is public land.
yep,
And that's
or more.
and how do you explain that, right? So we have these public lands, and but it was a legal battle, and it wasn't an easy thing to get passed, but ultimately it did get passed, and the state is allowed to grab 16% or more of the water. They already have it.
Well,
You think you'll ever get those MPAs back? You know what I mean?
well,
That's
we're
the marine
supposed to
protected
look at
areas
this with a decadal review, and
every
and
10
it's
years.
actually supposed to be 5 years, by the way, but they lied to us on. They never wrote it in any of the articles for the MPAs, but legally they're allowed. They're supposed to do it every 10 years, which is why they call it decadal review. It's supposed to look at how it's surveyed and look at data on what the impacts are on MPAs, see if they're a success, right? And so they
Yeah,
just did this. We all know this, what they reported up to 2015, and then there's sort of loose data after that. The bottom line is they don't have a way to undo the MPAs.
Right.
Why would they tell anyone that they want less land protected? Like, you
Right.
have to understand who's doing the survey in the first place.
Correct.
There's people who are employed who get contracts to give information to the state and to do the data and to get paid by the government to do this, and the funding comes from other people, not just the state. It comes
Oh
from other
yeah, yeah.
outside
It's all
sources.
special interest groups, 100%.
Exactly. I mean, they want the protected area. So, you follow the money, you find out who's involved, and you find out what the agenda is here. But in hindsight, the best thing that could have possibly happened before we even got here was the fishermen should have been in control of the survey data or the information in general, which we kind of are, because the only way that people know how much fish is out there and what the impact is of fishermen is by catch reports. That's it.
Right.
Survey
Yeah.
data. So aside from maybe going down and looking at the fish, it's very hard to do that. What they're trying to implement some of that
Yeah.
now, but
And it's a Ponzi scheme, dude, because it's like, what are they going to say? They can't say, "Oh, look how great it's worked. The fish are returned," because then people are going to be, well, then open it up. It's
well, that's what
healthy, right? But then if they don't, but then if they say, "Oh, it's the same. It's not working," then we're going to say, "Well, then get rid of the MPA. It's not doing anything." So
exactly.
they're in a lose lose. So they play this thing where they've already done it. I saw the report. They're like, well, it's promising, but we need more time. It
Yes.
needs another
Yes.
review. You
Yes.
never ever get a conclusive report from them. It's
Nope.
all snake oil. It's a Ponzi scheme. They
Yeah.
took the land. The report is nonsense. They have no intention, regardless of what the report says, positive or negative. They're never going to concede to opening up the MPAs to
The
fisheries
only
again.
way the only way to do it is to legally you have to challenge the state for implementing
Yes,
the
yes,
MPAs.
100%.
And if I haven't made it clear that there actually is potentially a case against the MPAs through what I've been saying beforehand with stalking
They stocked it, right?
gas,
Like,
you might actually have a case here where you could undo the MPAs. Just saying. So, and
well,
and I
it's already how do you the fact that they were able to take
well, no
taxpayer
one brought
land
this
like that
up.
and shut it down. It's insane. Like
But no one brought this up.
it's
Like
terrible.
I kept this paper. And by the way, the author of this report, it's called Striped Bass Studies on Coos Bay, Oregon, in 1914 and 1950. It's the title of the paper. It is written by Alfred R. Morgan, Oregon Fish Commission, and Arthur R. Gerlich, an Oregon Game Commission. So this is written by the Oregon state. Okay, so they're reporting on what's happened here. When you go look for this stuff from the California state, you won't find it. This is not here anymore. So people forget history very quickly. But this stuff, if you keep it, this is literally what's happened before. This is undoable. You can't unwrite history here. So
Yeah,
I would really like to see a challenge at some point to undo MPAs, because I think legally, if anything I said about stocking in the Pacific Ocean hasn't made sense to people, which actually happened, you could make a statement that the entire Pacific coast of California should be public access now with the MPAs
it should be
being
absolutely.
undone, because there could be striped bass swimming through there, which we've proven have definitely
Yeah,
been
there
the
already are.
case. Oh,
Yeah,
they're all over the coast. They've been caught in LA Harbor. They're caught off of Del Mar. They're caught off of IB. Like, there's places that they're caught all over along the coast. How are you going to defend the case that wasn't a planted fish at one point, and that we need access to that fish? So you got to open up the MPAs, which those fish are going through,
right.
right?
Even before that, it's like I still it's just the fact that they even got away with it in the first place. Like just being like, look, it's a public waterway. Like, what are you
Yeah.
smoking? That in
Well,
and of itself, we have
I was
fishing
there.
regulation. Like the physic, we have fishing regulations for that reason. Like you don't need to close down the land. If you think there's a problem with a species, we can regulate that. You know what
I
I'm saying?
I was there at the MPA meetings, specifically the one in San Diego when it was at the 4 Points in Kearney Mesa. It was down the street from my house, basically out my parents' house, and I didn't go to a final for my college degree because there was literally this thing that happened where people were able to go and confront the Fish and Game Commission, who was coming through and asking for public opinion, and you're putting your voice together for the MPA against the MPA. And so they gave us, a minute, everyone to speak. You have both sides come to, against, for or against the MPAs. Everyone spoke and whatever. But what was really interesting was there was really no legal defense against the implementation for MPAs at the time, and I don't think that people really looked at it and observed this from and actually I lied. There was a legal battle, but it was
There
more
was, yeah.
from a political side, a lobbyist side of this, where we were trying to get the attention from people to not allow the commission to do this. So in a way, it was defended. It was, trying to be prevented through legal defense. But I really think that the problem is that you can't really take the state to court without a ton of money, having a lawyer
Yeah,
involved, going to the challenge the state and not go through a legal process for X amount of years to finally come up with a decision to repeal the MPAs. It
right.
would take a lot of money. It would take a lot of people's time, and you would definitely be run through the ringer because people have a real incentive to prevent people from fishing in those MPAs for some reason.
Yeah.
So
And that's why we have the CCA.
that's why the
You know,
CCA, they do this. Like they have people,
and
they do
recently
things.
there've been some big wins.
Yeah,
With the
huge
CCA,
wins.
so
Yeah.
it's definitely been making a difference. Yeah, so I
Yep.
mean that falls so under the category of saltwater. You could pretty much fish everywhere except the MPA.
I mean,
In Southern California, so that is a place you can't fish. There are some rates you can fish some species, but not others. You do have to check on them because not
it's
all
the
MPAs
species
are the same.
thing at this point, right?
Yeah,
Because like the what we've tried, hopefully opened up to people in this conversation is that you can fish near docks. You can fish, you can fish in public waterways, public access waterways, marinas, all these places. You just can't touch private property, right?
right,
That's the basis of what we've been talking about. Now, species, that does not matter. You can fish you can fish a private waterway. You're still held to the state limits. You're still held to the state,
correct,
everything else,
correct.
and the protected fish. Like you can't take a black sea bass out of a public waterway and expect people to be happy with you, or in a private waterway. You can't do
Right.
that. So
And
the,
that's an interesting thing too, because we've just been talking saltwater, and well, when it comes to lakes and ponds, that's a whole different story. Because if those are on public land, like you don't have access to those. You know what I'm
well,
saying?
no, they
If they don't
do.
allow it,
Well, okay,
like where I grew up in the mountains, right? There was Lake Gregory, Lake
an
Arrowhead.
arrowhead, yeah,
Arrowhead is a public lake. You cannot fish there.
right.
People that they pay HOA
I
dues.
mean, private lake,
It's a private lake. I'm sorry. Crestline is a public lake, but it's controlled by like a different party. I don't know if it's run by the city or maybe I think they let San Bernardino County now run it, and it still costs you $8 to fish there. But you can access that publicly, but like Lake Arrowhead, you can't. You cannot fish unless you're a resident that has the dock rights. Then and you're a resident and you've got some sort of certification, then you're allowed to fish there. But you or I, we couldn't just go. But unless we knew somebody that as a
yeah.
guest and we're fishing from their docks.
And that's kind of weird because as I just stated in the Constitution, from the Constitution, that if you get a plant of any fish and game commission specific game fish being planted in there, pretty much it opens you to allowing you to fish it, right?
Well,
So if they ever received the
I think
DFG,
they're getting private plants. I don't think
yeah,
the state's not stocking them.
but if it ever did it,
If it did,
if it
if
ever
it did at some point, oh,
at
interesting,
any point, that is
interesting.
a
Yeah, that's true.
public access waterway. That's my
Yeah,
point here.
yeah,
Because this thing is from 1910, this article. This is not like a
that's true.
specific,
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
don't
this
know about
is
that.
all encompassing in the timeline of fishing in California. So,
Right,
I mean, we don't have to worry about prior because we don't live with that. Anything past 1910, is full on, like where you can have a conversation about it. I'm going to tell you exactly when that law was written. Just give me 1 second, because it tells you on the state. So November 8th, 1910 is when it was put into constitutional law for California. So
that's
and they
interesting.
give you all these dates. You can read this. It's the state constitution. It's not like I'm making some stuff up. I mean, this is written in this is law.
Right,
This is
right.
this is the deal. So But anyways, there is, I think, one huge difference. Having traveled around the country, California is so anti-fishing on many places in many ways. If you go to a place like Texas, if you go to Oklahoma, you go to wherever freshwater body you want to go to outside of California, maybe some certain states, pretty much almost every other state, I'd say more than 40, they don't have a lot of these big waterways, they don't even charge you to go on the lake. It's open 24/7. You can
Right.
go on it whenever you want. It doesn't need to be light. You can go in the dark. And that is just like, that is the way it should be.
Yeah,
Now,
I
if
agree.
I mean, you're already paying now. Now, here's one thing that really makes me upset. One of the main things, as a California citizen, I pay a lot of taxes. Right? You're escaped now, so you don't have to necessarily deal with it right now.
I have a nice shiny new Florida license.
I bet you. I bet you do. I bet. Wait, you have a license plate? A new license plate?
Well, I got my driver's license in Florida now.
Oh wow! There you
I got my
go.
voting. I'm a voter. Like I've revoked my California citizenship.
Good. Good for you. I'll be there with you very soon.
Which is
uh,
sad. I mean, I still love California. I'll always love California. Like I said,
it's a beautiful
I'll
place.
always support California CCA.
The fishing is
I'll
great.
always be part of the fight. I'll still go
The
back there and
fishing is
fish.
good.
Yes.
The fishing is good.
Yeah. The fishermen, the
So,
angling community, it's like the
what really
best.
cheeses me though is when I have to pay for a lake access, right, per
Right.
day,
Right.
and I already pay taxes to access that lake,
Right. And you paid for a fishing license.
and I paid for a
And
fishing
you
license.
still need the fishing license. And
And I
you have to
still
pay
need the
to
fishing
access.
license
Yeah.
to go get that, to go to
Yeah.
access the lake. So I paid 3 times to go and get to that
Yeah.
lake.
And I think
And
the
I can't
argument
fish
is
24/7. I
they
have to fish it
use
during opening hours.
because they say
Open
they
hours.
use the because a lot of those lakes are managed by like private companies. So
Yes.
they say it pays for the stock and then the management, to clean up the trash and do the reports and algae reports and stuff like that and campgrounds. But
Whatever.
still,
Like
like, why
they
is
get
it
paid.
why don't fishing licenses cover that?
I don't
It's probably just the money's not allocated correctly. That's why it's
did you know that California has the most expensive fishing license, by the way?
yeah. I
It
just
is.
paid. You sent me that article. I just paid $500 and got a lifetime. So Governor DeSantis made half price lifetime membership fishing licenses. So I got a fishing license that covers fishing, hunting, lobstering,
Really?
everything. It's
For
500 bucks
$500?
lifetime. It's till the end of this year. You
Wow.
can get one. So I have, and it's not just
What?
fishing, saltwater, freshwater,
Okay,
hunting, foul
wait.
hunting,
After this
everything.
year, you can't do that?
I think it's till the end of this year. DeSantis, he cut the price in half. It was like the get
Oh,
out. It was like the Florida get out and something like he was trying to encourage people to like get out in the open. So he cut there was like a park pass too, I think was half, but
wow.
I think it's only till the end of the year. So that was one. I don't know if you have to be a
Dude, you need to
citizen, but
get
that
one.
was
You need to get one for Soleil and
right.
Jessica. Honestly,
So that's why I kind
save
of
you a lot
rushed
of
to like
money.
get my license.
Yeah,
Honestly, I'm like, man, I don't know if it's Florida resident only, but I wasn't sure, so I
it
went and
has to
got
be.
it.
It has to be Florida resident
I
only.
think so.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, dude, I got the card, so I'm set. $500,
Wow. I have a lifetime California
everything
fishing
for everything.
license. And I have a lifetime California fishing license, but if I could have dual state citizenship and I could get me a Florida one too, I'm gonna do it for
Yeah,
sure. So
you
yeah,
bought
good
the
for you.
lifetime California one.
I have a lifetime California
Oh,
one. Yep.
nice,
Yep.
nice.
So I got it when I was like 6 years old. My grandfather
I heard
got it
that's the
for
way to
me.
do it. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. That's why I'm
It's
saying you should buy
cheaper
one for
and you
Soleil,
get
dude. You
yeah,
should buy
yeah,
a Florida one for
because
Soleil.
they're cheaper. I think it's even way cheaper than $500.
That's insane. Yeah, for
Yeah,
underage. Yeah, for like
yeah,
because they
one to
can't fish for
six.
a long time, so
Yeah,
it's they usually give you a discount to make up for the fact that they're not going to be able to use it for a while. So
right. But yeah, I thought that was pretty cool.
that is really cool. Good for you. I hope you go use it as much as you can. So and hunting too. Plenty of deer over there. So well,
Yeah, I'd like to
not
hunt more. I've done a bow hunted and stuff like that, but yeah, I definitely want to get into some more hunting for sure. Well,
Yeah,
awesome, Kevin. Thank you for coming on. It's been a pleasure. I don't want to take up too much more of your time,
no
but
problem.
yeah, it's been good. Anything you want to plug?
Yeah, if anyone wants to buy awesome, amazing fishing products, we can get you satisfied by going to a store that we basically facilitate business with. You see submission fishing companies products in stores. We're the guys that put it in the store. So if you can help support us by going out and supporting your local dealer and buying products within the store, even on their online platforms, it really helps us. So check out fishingreps.com. You can find products that we represent, everything you could want to learn about each one of those products, the size range, the colors that they're offered for each of the brands. And then you can find a store near you by using our dealer locator on the website. So check out fishingreps.com, reps.com, and you'll find, everything that you know about us, including that article that helps you protect your
Okay.
fishing rights and access in California. It's in that website. So check it out. And I run the thing, and we in fishing reps, and we have a bunch of other guys in the states that do it. So if you're an interested store in Florida and you want to bring in products like Submission Fishing Company, we're the guys you talk to. So contact us at fishingreps.com.
Yeah, awesome. Good stuff. And I guess mine ties into that. So go check out fishingreps.com if you want to find
There you
submission
go.
jigs at your local tackle store. And yeah, guys, so thanks for joining us. And in closing, I just want you guys to remember that if you're fishing in public waterways, you have the right. Don't be bullied out. You're allowed to fish docks. And if you're within your right to fish there, continue to fish there. Don't get pushed out. Stand strong. Don't tread on anglers. And just don't worry about what other people think. I know it's sometimes we don't want to confront people, but if it's the right thing to do, because ultimately you're going to lose your rights if you
Don't
will,
stand up for
and
them.
that's the scary part. And same thing with the government. If you when the government's already they want to take your land, that's the time to fight like hell, because once it goes, you never get it back. But yeah, all right, guys. Until next time, get your black belts in fishing. See you on the next one. Peace.